Welcome back, everybody. Rich here. This is Richard White Global, where, as always, we get into the past to understand the present and the future. Today, I thought I'd do something a little different. Since the King and Queen of England are currently in the United States, actually leaving today, they've been here for a few days doing a state visit. I thought I'd get into something that a lot of people don't understand. How does the parliamentary government of the United Kingdom work versus the United States government? Some things are very similar, some you're going to be shocked about, and some are very different. So let's get right into it. The United Kingdom and the United States, we do share a common language, obviously. I think they probably do it a little better than we do. We pretty much speak, I would say, American, not so much English per se. We do have a obvious common shared history, since most of what we call the United States now was, for the most part, former British colonies, as they were once called British America, even though Spain and France owned some of the United States territory as well at one time. But for the most part, we'll stick with our history's pretty much British America. But when it comes to government, there are some very good close similarities and some polar opposite systems. They both have bicameral governments, which means it's a two-party system. I mean, a two-party government. They have the House of Commons and the House of Lords in UK Parliament. We have, obviously, the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. So today we're just going to compare the two systems and see how, like I said, they're together in similarities and polar opposites on some other things. So what it comes down to is the British government emphasizes a system that's been built over many centuries into a parliamentary democracy is what it is today, where the supreme power is held by Parliament in the United Kingdom. In the United States, our supreme power lies with the United States Constitution and the documents. So let's get right into the United Kingdom head of state. We'll get into the House of Lords, the House of Commons, and move forward. But first, let's talk about the monarch. We all know about that. It's King Charles III right now, currently. He's been reigning now for a couple of years since his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, which was, by coincidence, the longest reigning monarch in United Kingdom history. So King Charles, or any monarch, he will serve or she will serve as the head of state, but not the head of government. So there's a distinct difference there in parliamentary governments. As of March 26, 2015, a big change was made that a lot of people don't realize. It used to always be the heir to the throne would be the firstborn male if there was a male. If not, then it would go to a female if there was nobody else. But again, in 2015, they changed the rules on the hereditary system for the monarch of the United Kingdom, I think just kind of coming of times. So now it strictly goes by firstborn child, and then it goes right in order. So, for example, next obviously will be King William at one point, and then his oldest son, which happens to be a male, will be King George, and then the next after that would be Princess Charlotte, and then Prince Louis, since they've done away with the male line of hereditary only. There again, I think it's just a coming of times. Now, let's get into the prime minister. So what's he do or she do, and how's it different? That the prime minister in a parliamentary system is basically the president. They hold all the power of government. They have the authority of the military, etc. Although the monarch still is considered the commander-in-chief. There are some ways that the monarch can kind of go around in certain times to kind of take power if need be, but it's probably not ever going to happen. It would take extenuating circumstances for that to happen. So the monarch is really only a figurehead. It's ceremonial, something that's been passed down for thousands of years, but really no authority of government whatsoever. That has been done away with over time. The absolute monarchy, as people think about, is what Hollywood, etc., thinks of as a king or queen. Those days have been gone for centuries. For the United Kingdom, it pretty much all started in 1215 with the Magna Carta signing, which over several centuries, it's eroded away more and more power of the monarch to basically to what it is today is just, like I said, simply a ceremonial position of hereditary, and then a tourist attraction, quite honestly. And then after the Magna Carta in 1215, then came the United Kingdom actually executed King Charles I in 1649. That eroded more power away. Then the English Bill of Rights in 1689, furthermore, and then final nail in the coffin to the, quote, absolute monarchy was Parliament Act of 1911, which cemented the United Kingdom into a democratic supremacy. This is what it's called. Now, in the United States, obviously, we're very familiar. We don't need to hash it out too much. The president serves as both head of state and head of government. No more than up to 2 4-year terms in office is it, so they are term limited. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the last one to serve multiple terms beyond that, so it was amended after him. Britain separates the crown completely from the government. The monarch, again, is strictly ceremonial. Is, like I said, the commander-in-chief, but the authority comes from the prime minister and the secretary of defense in the United Kingdom. America combines those into one role of an elected official, the president. Whether you like the person in office or not, that's just how we do it. Now let's get into the two parts of the system of Parliament. Like I said, there's the House of Commons, which currently holds about 650 members. And then there's the House of Lords / Peers, P-E-R-S, which currently has about 836 members. Now, what's different is the House of Commons is kind of like our House of Representatives. That's really where the power is in the government. They are elected, like ours are, up to 5-year terms, but they can have snap elections at any time sooner than that if need be, if you've heard that term. So the House of Lords is, at one time mostly, again, it was a hereditary position, and they are all appointed. Most of the hereditary stuff has been removed with the times, but they are appointed. And what is unique about that, kind of like our Supreme Court, the House of Lords is for life. It's a lifetime appointment. But they basically serve only as experts. They advise. Many of them are lawyers, engineers, doctors. They're kind of experts in lots of things. They revise rule bills and they look them over, but they don't actually make them. For what that's worth. But again, that's for life. Now, in the United States, we have the House of Representatives, which is right now currently established at 435 members. They serve 2-year terms, so they're all up for election every 2 years. And then the Senate is 100 seats always, which is 2 per state. They serve 6-year terms, and they are staggered, so that way only about 1/3 of the United States Senate is up for grab every 2 years during elections. So there's not that major turnover upheaval. But again, they're both bicameral governments. They both have 2 chambers, but they serve very different purposes. The House of Commons, like I said, is about 650 members of Parliament. You may hear the term MPs, and no, that's not military police like we think in the United States. That means members of Parliament. They are elected individuals by their constituents, just like ours. Their Constitution states that they must have a general election no more than every 5 years. But what's unique about Parliament, they can collapse the government and have, like I said, snap elections much sooner if need be. That's when, they throw out their leader. There's which is the prime minister, or they can dissolve the government. If they can't pick a leader, then they can just dissolve Parliament, and they can have what they call snap election and basically just do it all over again. But they just have to have one no later than every 5 years, period, general election. Their boundaries are periodically reviewed by independent commissions. Unlike the United States, the total number of seats is set by law and can be changed by Parliament. Ours are a set number, 435 currently, and like I said, 100 senators. In the House of Representatives, the seats are appointed among the states based on the census, which is typically done every 10 years. I mean, there's talk of doing one sooner, which I suppose is possible, but typically it's every 10 years on the 10-year mark. Like I said, they serve 2 years, and they have to they basically are always running for office, even though you may not hear about it because many of them just serve over and over. Nobody runs against them, or they don't have the money to run against them. So basically, the difference is Britain's House of Commons, they directly form the government, Here, America's House is completely separate from the executive branch. Like I said earlier, Parliament is a supreme power in the United Kingdom. Ours is, like, again, the Constitution that we hear endlessly about, obviously. Now, the House of Lords / peers, you can call it what you want. Those are, like I said, basically lifetime appointed peers. Currently, like I said, 836. Some are bishops, and our limited number of hereditary peers remain. Not that many. I think it's maybe 90-something right now. And they do serve for life. The Lords basically review legislation and make suggestions. There again, that's what comes back to the expert part. They're basically advisors, but I'm sure they have a little influence, but they don't legally make legislation. They just review it and advise. They can delay bills if they want to, though. But typically in Parliament, whatever party's in power, they're pretty much going to get the legislation through much faster because they don't have to go back and forth like we do between the House and Senate in the United States and get everything bounced off in checks and balances. So the party in power, as it's called, pretty much can run the tables, but they can also collapse the government. The advantage of Parliament is it's a efficient system of government compared to ours, but it's very unstable. Ours is not efficient, but in the United States it's very stable because of our policies and procedures that must be followed, checks and balances. Again, we have senators, 100 of those. They're elected. There's always 2 per state. And again, they're staggered. The Senate pretty much confirms appointments for cabinet members, etc., is what they do. You hear about the cabinet hearings all the time. They ratify treaties, and they conduct impeachment trials. So again, when you hear impeachment, that does not mean the president or whoever's gone. Impeachments typically start in the House of Representatives. They make the charges, but you have to be convicted in the Senate to lose your job. If you're not convicted, you're just simply impeached and it's over. Again, the House of Lords in the United Kingdom is a revising chamber for the most part. The Senate is a co-equal legislative chamber with an enormous constitutional authority in the United States. So how do you choose an elector and a head of state? Well, in the United Kingdom, again, you have votes no more than every 5 years. But the unique thing about how do you get a prime minister? Well, in most parliamentary systems, you actually vote for the party. So you won't see Joe Smith or whoever on a ballot in the United Kingdom or pretty much any other parliamentary system. You'll see the party. But whoever the party leader is, the party in power that wins the election, that person will become prime minister. That's where it gets tricky because he has to basically bend over and cater to his party and keep them really happy. Or if not, they can remove him. They can do a no confidence vote. They can remove them and you're just gone, which you'll hear parliamentary systems do that more often than not. It happens. So they've always got to pretty much cater to the party in power or their own party will hit the bricks. So there again, that's why, and there's a lot of problems with that right now in Europe, in the United Kingdom, with their current prime minister, which is very unpopular Starmer. And there again, they could change the prime minister without an election, unlike here, because the party in power, again, picks that person. So, for example, if we had a parliamentary system in the United States, right now the party leaders, theirs comes from the House of Commons, not the House of Lords, which would be our House of Representatives. So, for example, today you would vote for you would go vote for Democrat or Republican, or in the United States, or independent. So, whichever party won power, that leader would become prime minister if we had that system here. So currently it would be, the prime minister would simply be Mike Johnson. And if the Democratic system won, the prime minister would be Hakeem Jeffries because they're the leaders of the party. That's how it works. But there again, if you don't keep your party happy, they hook you. That's the unstable part of it. The voters elect the president through the Electoral College here, which is based on a set number for each state based on population. So the presidents serve, like I said, no more than 2 4-year terms. They do not have to be consecutive, just like President Trump is currently doing. A British government can collapse within itself overnight. The American government cannot do that. It has to change on a schedule. which if you pay attention to politics, you'll hear sometimes about governments collapsing. It just recently happened a couple of times in France over the last couple of years. In the United Kingdom, like I said, the party in power, they pretty much work amongst themselves. So when bills are processed, they're pretty much passed right through. Usually they get what they want because they're the party in power. There is no checks and balances. You can only get advisement from the House of Lords. And they can slow down the process, but eventually it will get through because they don't have any legislative power per se. In the United States, bills must go through both houses, Senate or House of Representatives, vice versa. They can start in either one, but they both have to be signed off with the same policies and procedures in that bill. If they make changes, it's got to start all over again. Somebody's got to check the box twice in both houses, and then the president can still veto that if he chooses to. And that's another problem. I mean, that's another, power of our government when you have that executive branch, which is strictly the entire executive branch is the president, basically in a nutshell, as we all know. The way the governments kind of view themselves is Britain's values efficiency because, like I said, they get things moving through pretty quick because the party in power just there's nobody going to stop them. America, we value restraint. So again, you've got checks and balances. That's in my opinion, that's why we have the greatest country in the world is because of the checks and balances. Even though we do fight amongst ourselves, in case you haven't heard. In the United Kingdom, there again, the Prime Minister he must maintain power and he must maintain the confidence of the House of Commons, or he will be simply unemployed. Now, one thing I found out is prime ministers they do not take an oath of office as prime minister. Why? Because when they come from members of parliament, so they believe that initial oath for becoming a member of parliament takes care of all that. The one thing they do is whenever a prime minister is picked by their party, they will traditionally meet the monarch, and then that monarch at the time will tell the prime minister that was just picked, now go form a government. That's English tradition. Go form a government. That's kind of their swearing in, so to speak. It's just simply a meeting at the Buckingham Palace with the monarch. It's just that simple. In the United States, you can only remove the executive officer or, through impeachment and conviction, which is in the Senate. Otherwise, they remain in power until their term ends. So, to kind of wrap this up, the British House of Commons simply forms the government in the United Kingdom, and the American House of Representatives does not form a government. The people form the government by voting the House of Representatives or a congressman in. The House of Lords just simply reviews legislation, and they are basically subject matter experts, etc. That's what they do. But they are for life, which I guess is a good deal. But most of them have simple other jobs. It's not really a full-time job like our senators and congressmen have here. The United States Senate, they help govern the nation. So that's why it's called the upper house, and the House of Representatives is kind of called the lower house. British members of parliament can serve for up to 5 years before the general election, like I said, but they may have to be elected sooner if they go to a snap election. Again, to refresh, House of Representative members of the United States must be reelected every 2 years. All of them. So they're all on, like I said, they're kind of always running for office. British peers, lords, serve for life. The U.S. senators, again, are 6-year staggered terms. About 1/3 of our senators are running every 2 years. British government, they prioritize flexibility, efficiency, and parliamentary accountability because, again, they don't have a constitution. Parliament is the power, supreme power. Ours is simply about checks and balances in the United States, and we must always make sure we stay in the framework of the United States Constitution, to which we value so much, obviously, as Americans. And there again, that's where the Supreme Court comes into play. So if you have any other things you'd like to get into about this or any questions, just feel free to like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. I love to talk about this stuff. I think it is ironic that today, as a matter of fact, or yesterday, I take that back, that the King and the Queen, King Charles and Queen Camilla, were in New York City to meet the Mayor Mamdani there, who was very adamant publicly that he was going to ask very strongly or demand that this giant diamond that's in one of the crowns of the monarch was giving back to the people. He's from Uganda, but it was proven fact that it's already been overruled. That was considered a gift to the United Kingdom. So when the king came yesterday, he cowered it down. He never did ask for that, and he ran on that publicly, which is one of his many other lies that's never come to fruition since he's been in office now for 4 months of just total lunacy in New York City. But that's a whole other story. But there again, he said he was going to do it. Well, the king shows up, and he never brought it up. Imagine that. Kind of like the free buses that went up in price. So again, hit like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Really love to get into this stuff. I hope this shed a little light on how the two systems work, because they are very unique and they're similar but very different. Many people think the king is a, quote, king. No, he's basically a ceremonial, passed down job. I mean, they say it's good to be the king. Well, obviously it is. You don't have to do much to get that spot. And the times have changed to where the old saying, the sun never sets on the United Kingdom. Well, I think that the sun may do it now because they've lost so much of their colonies over the years. There again, I find it ironic that so many people are just doing this lunacy, no kings nonsense in the United States with President Trump, et cetera, protest. It's just crazy. But yet not one Democrat, when he spoke to Congress a couple of days ago, King Charles, not one of them stood up and screamed and protested about no kings. They stood up and clapped, cheered, give him the high fives, everything, rah, rah, rah. You thought they would have wanted a king. But that's the same king whose fifth great-grandfather established these colonies and lost those colonies for the United Kingdom. Just think where England would be today had King George, his fifth grandfather, just simply said, you know what, let's give them a vote. Well, they'd be the most powerful thing on earth by far. So look what ultimate power did to that country. So something to think about. But there again, not one of these no kings nonsense protesters had one word to say about this. Nowhere he's went, you saw any rioting or protesting for a real king. By the way, the same king whose fifth grandfather set up the colonies that had slavery all over the South. Nobody seemed to care. Think about that.